Welcome to Better Sex, where you get the information and inspiration to create and enjoy your best possible sex life. Join your host, sex therapist Jessa Zimmerman, as she brings you expert guests, helpful tips, knowledge, and strategies to improve your intimate relationships. And now, your host, Jessa Zimmerman.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Better Sex Podcast. This is Jessa, and I want to thank you for tuning in, for spending a little bit of your time with me, listening to another episode of things that will hopefully lift the burden. And again, just like so many of my episodes, this one may not apply yet, but it will someday, because what we're talking about today is sex as we get older. Senior sex. And when does that start? 50? I hope not, because I'm 57, 60, 70, whatever it is. How can we have a thriving, fulfilling sex life across our whole lifespan and not give up and think that there's some age at which we retire our genitals, right? We mail them in, we shut them down, and go without. We don't have to do that. Sex can be part of our life forever. And so I am talking to the perfect guest today about this. Joan Price has been writing about this for years. She is going to tell you in the interview she met her true love at 57 and went on to be having, the best sex she'd ever had, and found that nobody had been writing about this. So over the course of 15 years or more now, she's written numerous books and blogs and presented and developed webinars and all this stuff, all geared toward supporting us in senior sex. So if you are younger, pocket this one away, make a little mental note to come back to this someday, or sort of have the idea in your mind that, yes, I can continue to be sexually fulfilled as I hit my later years. And if you're older, this podcast is for you. You're going to get to tune into some of the wisdom and the attitude and the mindset, really, we need to wrap our minds around to have successful sex late into our years. So anyway, Joan Price is fabulous, and I'm so glad she's here, and I hope you get a lot out of the episode. And before we start the show today, it is sponsored by Intimacy with Ease. It's a method to help otherwise happy couples achieve a sex life that is easy and fun for both of them, so that you can actually just enjoy your sex life with zero stress. For more information, if you want to watch a brief little training video that's available, all of that, go to intimacywithease.com. So, Joan, thank you so much for being on the show with me.
My pleasure. I'm so gled to be talking to you.
I have been looking forward to this episode. I think the topic has been on my mind maybe from the very beginning, 2 years ago. It's just such a treat to finally get to interview you.
Oh, well, it's my honor.
So would you start by just talking a little bit about your interests? Like, what got you interested in, I don't know, we call it senior sex. Do you have a favorite term for it?
I call it senior sex.
Senior sex.
Some people don't like the term, but I find that when people are looking for the kind of information I provide, what they look for is senior sex.
Okay.
So I'll own that.
All right.
So I'm in my third career right now. I was a high school English teacher for 22 years. And then after a near fatal automobile accident that brought home to me the joy of movement and how fortunate we are if we can move, I became a fitness trainer and a group exercise instructor and a writer about health and fitness. So I left teaching to do that, to do teaching in a different way.
Right.
And then I met my great love in my later life. I've met him when I was 57 and he was 64. We had the most, in my view, earth-shattering relationship, planet-shattering relationship. And part of that was great sex. And at that time, I'm now 76. At the time, I did not find any books that reflected the kind of sex I was having or the kind of information that I wanted to learn about how to make it better, how to compensate for the kind of challenges that we were facing as older people. And so at age 61, I wrote my first senior sex book, Better Than I Ever Expected, straight talk about sex after 60. And then I guess for the last 15 years, I haven't stopped writing and speaking out loud about senior sex, being an advocate for ageless sexuality.
Yeah. It's interesting, because part of the training to become a certified sex therapist, we have the sexual attitudes reassessment, it's called. And part of the programming in that is about senior sex. And it's striking to hear how many people thought, sex ends at 50 or 60 or whatever,
Right.
Like it can be a very challenging idea that older people somehow are still sexual, which to me, it's like, thank goodness we are,
When I was starting to do this work and just starting to do media interviews, a male reporter, I would guess his age from his voice to be in his, 30s. And he said, well, I get what you're saying, Joan, but I don't know. When I imagine my parents having sex, ew. And I said to him, well, at what age do you plan to retire your genitals?
What did he say?
Have an answer to that.
It's okay for me, just not everybody else, right?
Exactly. But, the idea that at some arbitrary date, we say, okay, done.
Yeah.
Let's go on and learn to crochet or something. Nothing against crocheting, but it's not the same as sex.
No. And, one thing I'll say sometimes in my interviews, I've had couples as young as maybe 21 or 22 in my practice. And then my oldest couple so far has been about 80.
Wonderful.
And it's like, it's wonderful news that people at that age are still investing in their sex life and still, want to keep it vibrant and fulfilling. And, that's good news for all of us.
And I don't want to play the Pollyanna card and say it can be just the same as when you're in your 20s. It's not.
Right.
It is different. We are in different bodies. We have different experiences. We have different histories with our partners, if we have partners, or we're single again at an older age, and our bodies are different and everything has changed.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that sex has to go away. It means we redefine it, we recalibrate it.
And it doesn't mean it's always changed for the worse either, right?
No.
Like our bodies maybe are less flexible or less whatever, but it doesn't mean that the sex itself goes downhill.
It doesn't, but so many people take it as that when they find that, say, their knee arthritis doesn't let them get in their favorite position, or they are taking much too long to reach orgasm, or their partner has erectile dysfunction, or undependable erections, or, any number of things, or maybe intercourse does not feel as good as it used to. So there can be changes that when we encounter them, we go, okay, so how can I make this better? Or what can I do instead? And how do we find the words to talk about this so that we're not left just wishing our partner could read our minds?
Yeah. Yeah. But wouldn't you, I imagine you would agree that there are benefits to being older too, right? Like there are things that come with age that are going to make our sex life even better.
Oh my gosh, yes. I always say that sex can be better than I ever expected because we have learned from our years. We know what we like. We know what we like sexually. We know what we like in other ways too. We have learned how to communicate better. I hope we have. Mm-hmm. We are maybe more forgiving about the things that used to seem like big deals and now seem like little deals or no deals at all. And also, we have a richer experience. We can really appreciate that our bodies can give us such pleasure.
Yeah.
We maybe are not so hung up on, oh, I know, but there's a wrinkle here and a wrinkle there. And if we can get past that, get past those things into what's really important about this, or who told you that a wrinkle meant you couldn't have good sex? Where'd you learn that anyway?
Yeah.
Can we unlearn that?
Yeah. Are there any statistics about sex as we age? Like, how sexually active people are at different ages? Is there, do we have any data?
I love that question because you're going to get a longer answer than you thought you would get.
Okay, good.
The answer is there have been some surveys, but here's the problem. The main problem is usually nobody asks us. Because what can you sell if we give you the answer, right? It's not going to help you sell a drug. It's not going to help you sell whatever. So therefore, the studies are not funded that would get the kind of information we want. Also, if they are doing a study, what they ask us is not the meaningful question for our experience. For example, they'll say, are you sexually active? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Do you mean, do I have orgasms? Do you mean, do I arouse myself with sex toys? Do you mean, do I have partner sex? If so, do you mean PIV, penis and vagina? Or do you mean hands, mouths? What do you mean by sexually active?
Yeah.
They don't ask us that. I would love to have them ask us, how do you express yourself sexually these days? That's what I want people to answer. Oh, why don't I create my own survey?
I was just going to say,
what's the matter with me?
Maybe you need to be the one that's asking these questions.
What's the matter with me that I didn't do this myself? Okay, all right.
Okay, we got your fourth career now, right? You can be a psychological researcher.
I don't know about being a researcher, but I can see asking my newsletter subscribers that question.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The answers won't fit in simple categories. I don't want simple categories because simple categories will then say if you're doing something outside of what I thought to ask, then your experience isn't valid. And I don't believe that for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there other questions you would want to ask? Like what else would be on that survey?
Yes. What is interfering with your sexual pleasure? Being that open-ended, it could be I'm having trouble reaching orgasm. I don't have a partner. My vibrator broke. I've never used a vibrator. Should I? There are all these components.
Yeah.
To what's interfering.
Right. So what are some of the challenges that, obviously there's a huge breadth of challenges that people face, but what are some of the challenges you think are related to sex and aging?
The umbrella term that it all falls under is the old ways don't work the way they used to. And that can be erections are not as easy, or I can't maintain them long enough for penetration. Or it could be, I used to really love cowgirl, but it hurts my hips. Or it could be penetration is not comfortable anymore. Maybe there's a medical issue. Maybe there isn't. It just isn't my favorite thing anymore. There are so many different aspects of that. Oh, lack of desire. Big one. I don't feel desire anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you saw, I write not only for my own blog at joanprice.com and at Senior Planet, seniorplanet.org. I also have been writing for hotoctopus.com. And I wrote a blog post explaining the difference between spontaneous desire and responsive desire.
I talk about this all the time.
Good for you. Good for you. Because most people who are not in the field, in the sexuality field in one way or the other, do not know this.
Right.
And they think that if spontaneous desire has gone away, if it was ever there to begin with, that therefore they don't want to have sex. And that's just not true.
So speak a little bit, even though some of my audience will have heard me talk about this, if you would, describe what you mean by responsive desire and how this applies, especially as we get older.
Sure. So responsive desire is that after you start getting going physiologically, you start getting sexually aroused, your body starts getting sexually aroused, then the desire kicks in. In other words, desire in response to an action, the action being arousal. So instead of waiting for spontaneous desire, that's the kind of desire that says, I am horny, I want to have sex, bring it on. Where are you, sex partner? Instead of that, come on out now. I'm ready. Instead of that, if what you've been experiencing is, I never really seem to care about sex until I get going and then I do. Then that means what you feel is responsive desire, and it is absolutely as powerful as spontaneous desire. It just acts in a different order.
Yeah.
Is that the way you would explain it?
Oh, absolutely. And when I talk to clients about this, so much of the time they say, well, that happens. Like they don't even recognize that that's a valid way of having desire. They just think, I've got no sex drive. And it's like, no, that responsive desire is so important and just as valid.
And the older we get, and we don't have that biological urge to have sex because the hormones have receded. We don't have the testosterone, the estrogen, and we're just, our bodies are not wired for reproduction anymore because we're past that age.
Yeah.
Therefore, our reasons for having sex, our desire to have sex, is different than it was when it was a reproductive urge.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that makes sense to our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. But when I talk to couples about this, or when I talk about it even on the podcast, personally, I talk about the importance of going into that play open-ended without any pressure. Like just because you start to mess around doesn't mean your desire will show up that time. Like there needs to be a flexibility around, I call it, we're going to the playground. It's just the outing that counts, not what we do when we get there. There's no failure, because it doesn't,
I like that.
Just because you mess around doesn't mean you're going to get aroused and want to have sex, but you might, right? So it's about creating that opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. I like that very much. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. So this is more relevant for as we get older, right? Everybody's going to shift more towards responsive desire. Because the hormones are shifting. Yes.
And although we tend to think of responsive desire as something that is more common in women, it becomes increasingly common in men as they get older.
Yes.
When they have the decreased testosterone too, when they don't, they calm down. And many men have said to me, they really appreciate having calmed down, that they're not just thinking with their penis anymore. The other head can get some action.
Right.
And yet there's that fine line between calming down and deciding to just not think about sex at all. I mean, part of it is it becomes intentional. It's not something that happens to you anymore. It's something that you make happen.
Right. Which speaks to, the importance of being intentional about it, creating some opportunities, scheduling some time or
scheduling sex. Yes.
Yeah.
I am always promoting that. Put it on your calendar.
Yeah.
And then, not only does that ensure that it's going to happen or more likely to happen because we lead busy lives, even if we're retired, or many of us will never be able to afford to retire. So that doesn't even count.
Right.
But even if we have retired, we don't just sit around waiting for something to do. And so if we schedule sex, not only does that make it more likely to happen, but also we have what I call mental foreplay, that anticipation. Because if you think of when we were young, and yes, we remember youth.
I can vaguely remember that.
You vaguely remember youth. Do you remember your dates with someone you were really hot for?
Right.
think about it day and night in the days leading up. And then we would think, oh, okay, what will I wear? You'd select your underwear with care. You would pay special attention to your grooming and what do I want to smell like? And, all of this is part of the mental foreplay of getting ready for sex. Because your brain, of course, is your most powerful sex organ.
Right. And I think it's my experience, and in talking to couples, that mental foreplay, even that we might need to do intentionally.
Yes.
Like if we know we have scheduled what I call playground time or this chance for sex on Tuesday, it's helpful to intentionally think sexy thoughts or look forward to it, or, bring some kindling to the fire, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Instead of just sort of, thinking about the hardware store stop all the way up until 5 o'clock Tuesday or whatever.
It's Jessa here, just taking a quick break. Thanks for listening. Are you interested in being a guest on the show? I'm always looking for people with expertise to share that could enrich other people's sex lives. And I'm also interested in hearing from people who have transformed their own intimate relationship and would want to share their story with my listeners. So if you've got something to contribute to the discussion and want to see about being featured on an upcoming episode, please visit our website, bettersexpodcast.com, and check out the Be a Guest details. You'll find everything you need there.
So what would you say are some, I don't know if it's strategies or hints or advice or encouragement you would give to couples who they're facing this challenge. Things are not working the way they used to. And plenty of people greet that with despair or discouragement or resignation, as opposed to like, okay, we just got to rally and recreate this. Like, how do you advise people approach those challenges and shift that?
I'm asked this so often that I created some webinars that actually answer 90-minute webinars that are classes in, for example, 7 ways to regain your sexual pleasure, that talks about all of this, talks about responsive desire and scheduling and how you can communicate about these new needs. Communicating about your needs is one of the big ones. Yeah. Knowing what you need is another big one. Sometimes we're aware of what doesn't work, but not aware of what does work so much. So I would say, and I know it'll seem self-serving, but to answer your question would probably take me 90 minutes, but I really would recommend viewing one or more webinars or reading some of my best known books, Naked at Our Age, Talking Out Loud About Senior Sex, or The Ultimate Guide to Sex After 50. They're packed with the kind of information that people ask me about all the time. I also send out a monthly newsletter. I have a blog. If people will go to joanprice.com, they'll see all those options.
Okay.
And that will really help because I'll give you tips. I'm very happy to, but I don't think you want to talk all day, or maybe you do.
Yeah, I mean, I probably do, but no, we can't go that long on the podcast. But I guess as an overview, it sounds like there's an invitation into changing a mindset, right? Like, just because things have changed doesn't mean your sex life has to die.
Right.
It sounds like there's a certain amount of figuring out what does work now. What do you like now? What do you respond to now? What can your body do now?
Exactly. And then there's communicating.
And then there's communicating that, right, with your partner. And then it's got to go both ways, right? What works for my partner too.
Exactly. And I'd love to know how you teach people to have conversations about sex. But one of the things that I teach people is to make appointments to discuss your sex life. Not to do it while you're naked, not to do it when an orgasm didn't happen, not to have it so fraught with that sexual energy or lack of energy, but instead to say, things have changed for me and I'd love to share what I'm discovering about myself. And I want to hear the same about you. Can we maybe talk on Saturday? Sit over a cup of tea or take a walk in the park and talk about this. And by doing that, you're not putting your partner on the spot and and making it seem like it's going to be a challenge. I'm going to tell you what you're doing wrong.
Right.
That's not what it's about. And then also to, when you do this conversation, as I'm sure you teach, to talk only in I sentences. I used to enjoy having my breasts touched, but now that doesn't work for me so much. I like more warm up before you actually get to the genitals. Put it in what you need, what you want, not what how someone else is maybe not meeting the needs that the person didn't even know you had.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, we're totally aligned in how we talk about this stuff. And
what else? How else do you do this, if I may ask?
Yeah, I mean, I talk to people about coming at it from a positive, that I want our sex life to be as rich and as fulfilling as it can be, and I want to work with you to have that be the case for both of us. That we're on the same team. We're looking for a win-win. Something. Ultimately, we're looking for a sex life that's going to be really engaging for both of us and connecting. The other thing I sometimes talk to people about is, especially if they're going to approach their partner about it, is spend some time in advance, what I call pre-empathize with your partner, and try to imagine what's happening for them, how they are thinking about it, and what they're feeling about it, and what they might be afraid of. And, you may not even be right, but I think trying to climb into their shoes before you even have the conversation.
And then how do you check out if you're right?
Well, ultimately, when you start to get into the conversation and you're talking all in this I language, your partner also shares, and then it's like, oh, I realize, and you may not be right about what you think they're thinking, but at least it's an exercise in trying to understand that they may be struggling too, or this could be hard for them for some reasons that you haven't appreciated.
It's so hard for my age group to talk about sex. Because we were taught not to. We were taught not to think about it, not to have it, not to do it, not to talk about it.
Yeah.
We were supposed to pretend it didn't exist until our wedding night.
Your magical wedding night, right?
Yeah, when we would be all passionate and have orgasms. And if not, women were frigid, which is what we were called if we were not orgasmic through intercourse. And most women are not. So, so harmful, the messages we were taught. And as much as we rebelled, because mine is also the generation that rebelled, it's hard to get rid of those little voices in our head that tell us, you shouldn't be talking about this. You'll make him feel bad. All of this stuff that stops us. And I'm creating, this is one of the many things on my to-do list. I am creating a new webinar called Help Me Find the Words, which is exactly about what we're talking about. How to create sort of sample sexual scripts for talking about these issues and then to make them your own.
Yeah. I mean, the largest message from my point of view is just for people to understand that at any age we can create our best possible sex life, alone or with a partner, and that we don't have to shut the door on this and wave goodbye,
It just personally was very hard for me to learn to talk about what I needed or didn't want during sex. I could do it before and after, but during was very difficult. And I have over the years taught myself to do that. And what I love is when a partner responds with, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a gift.
That just makes me, oh my God, that's the best you could say.
I tell my clients, and again, my clients are not all older people, right? I work with all ages, but I tell my clients that we're all responsible for our own pleasure. Mm-hmm. And we have to enlist our partners with that. We have to give them the information they need. And it is a gift,
yes.
Nobody's supposed to magically know what to do for someone else or read their mind or be good at this,
I know. And when a partner says, thank you, I needed to know that. And then later says, I'm really glad you told me. I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah.
So, of course you wouldn't have. How would you have? I hadn't told you yet.
Right.
Yeah.
I was wondering if I think my final question, although maybe you've got some more ideas of things you want to share, but it seems to me there are some other complications as people age that then affect their sex life. And I'm thinking about the death of a partner, or the permanent...
I wrote a whole book about that.
Okay. You are obviously just a wealth of resources. It's amazing.
Well, I've lived a long life.
Yeah.
Sex After Grief, Navigating Your Sexuality After Losing Your Beloved is my latest book.
Wow.
I lost my husband in 2008, my great love that I mentioned before. And over the years, I went through pretty much every kind of reaction to that one can have as far as trying to emerge and get into the dating world and get into having sex again. And I would try this and then go run under the covers again for a few more months and try that and then go, oh no, that's not for me. Or try this and dissolve into tears. And so in all this time, I was trying things and recording. I kept a journal. I kept 2 journals actually, and that's something that I talk about in the book. And finally, when I felt I felt I had learned some wisdom to share and decided that would be my next book. And I started writing it, and I asked for experiences of my newsletter subscribers who had also been through this, because I didn't want it to just be, oh, so here's how Joan did it. I'm just one person. And one of the main lessons about coming back to your sexuality after losing your beloved is that there's no one way to do it. There's no one right way. There's no one way that will work for everyone. So I give my way. I give other people's ways. I have some pointers from sex therapists and grief counselors. And it's, I love this new book. It's a little book. It's not one of these big ones that'll take you forever to read. And it is also available from my website, joanprice.com.
Great. Okay. So now, did you also write a book, or maybe this will be your next one, about the challenges about maintaining sexuality in a assisted living facility or a nursing home? Or I mean, this is something that, I don't know. Ever since grad school, I've had this soft spot in my heart for this, that people are kept apart and they're not supposed to be sexual. It's not supported in an institutional environment, right?
I know. I have written blog posts about it, and I have a chapter in The Ultimate Guide to Sex After 50 about that. There are other people in that field. So I won't be writing that particular book. There are some people working on that. But you're right that what happens when you go into a facility like this, normally you're kept apart from other people.
Yeah.
You can't lock your door.
Yeah.
You can't often even close your door. You don't have any privacy. If you're seen holding hands with someone, maybe your adult children will come to visit you and go, no, I can't have that. Transfer her.
Oh.
This has happened to people.
Yeah.
Love affairs have been broken up because the adult children couldn't handle it. There are a few, and I hope more and more each year, but I don't really know that, assisted living facilities where sexuality is a patient right. RIGHT, not RITE, though it could probably be both. For example, the Hebrew Home in Riverdale has been a trailblazer for decades on this.
Wow.
They had a position paper on sexual rights of residents decades ago when no one else was thinking about it. Their attitude is this is their home. This isn't their jail.
Yeah.
And they train staff and they train the adult children who bring the residents. They say, listen, here are the rights that your mother will have from now on.
I'm thinking about back to the guy who interviewed you who sounded like 30. I don't want to think about my parents having sex. That's probably a very common thing. Adult children are getting in the way of, they don't understand their own parents' sexuality.
They go, no, or maybe even, let's say someone has dementia and doesn't remember that she's already married.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I recommend in The Ultimate Guide to Sex After 50, and I recommend this when I give talks also, that just as we write up our advanced directive for health care, We can write up our advance directive for sexual rights. We can write up what we want to have happen to us. You know, and we should also, if we are partnered, talk to a partner about this. Say, if you no longer remember me, I give you absolution for finding love where you find it.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Or the vice versa. If I no longer remember you, I don't want you to spend all your time caregiving me. I want you to find joy where you can find it. Yeah. And I can accept that.
Yeah.
You know, we need to think through these things. Because we are not going to die at the same moment unless it's a car crash.
Right.
Where one of us is going to outlive the other. And so, or we will be left with the decisions being made by our adult children who have never wanted to think of us as sexual beings.
Right. And who are not going to be definitely not in a position to make those decisions.
Right. So we need to say to them, here's what I've written up. And I'm expecting you to observe this, that at a certain point, it doesn't really matter how you feel about this. This is what I want. And then it also, I think, is incumbent upon us to find out which of the living arrangements would permit us to be sexual.
Right. So that's a question to ask going in, right?
Yeah. I mean, while we're still healthy and don't need it, we can see what is in our area. Which ones would we see? Where would we see ourselves if we could no longer take care of ourselves? And then to ask them, so, do you have a policy for sexual rights of your residents? If they say, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
You know? Or if they say, we shouldn't we? We say, well, get back to me when you have one, because that's important to me.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we're necessarily going to be looking for a place to be having full out sexual expression the way we may be having it now. Maybe we will, but maybe we just want to be able to cuddle naked in bed with someone.
Right.
And very few places. Or masturbate, right.
Yeah.
Charge our sex toys. I have written in mine, which is published in the book. I have my own sexual rights policy.
You'll keep me stocked with AA batteries, right?
Well, no, I don't use those anymore. I'd use the rechargeables. So I want to be able to recharge my sex toys at will. And when I close my door, don't open it unless it's an emergency.
Yeah. Knock before entering, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This has been wonderful. Anything I missed that you want to make a point of addressing?
Oh, there's so much. There's so much to talk about. I thank you so much for opening this topic, and I'd be happy to come back again for a second conversation.
Perfect. That's probably the way to do it. So thank you. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Better Sex. Please visit our website, bettersexpodcast.com, for show notes and additional episodes.
And that's a wrap for today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you are enjoying the podcast, if some of this material resonates with you and you would like to make a difference and make sure that this keeps coming out in the world once a week, ongoing, there are a couple things you could do to show your appreciation. The first would be to go to iTunes and rate and review the show. That really helps us be found by new listeners when you review the show on iTunes. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/iTunes. The other thing I want to invite you to consider is becoming a Patreon. For a small monthly pledge, you get some benefits. So for $2 a month, you get advance access to every single episode. For $5 a month, you get a chapter of my upcoming new book. And for $10 a month, I host quarterly get-to-know-you and question-and-answer chats over the web, and you get invited to that. I would love to have your membership in that, become part of the Better Sex family. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/Patreon, which is Patreon. Again, thanks for listening. I'm glad you're here. Feel free to comment, ask questions, get in touch. I'd love to hear from listeners. Thanks.